In this video, I'm going to show you the fastest way to fix an advertising funnel that used to work so you can get back to closing 5 to 10 or even more new clients every single month. If your ad funnel used to perform, used to generate new clients, but now it's stuck, this will sound familiar. Because when performance starts to dip, most people don't diagnose, they start to panic. Sales blames marketing and marketing blames sales. People start changing their ads, their offers, their landing pages, their scripts, their email follow-ups, anything that looks like action and feels like progress. And that's how most funnels actually break. No clear diagnosis, no clear hypothesis, just throwing darts at the wall. And when that doesn't work, most people do one of two things. They either keep their ads running for another couple months, just burning their spend, or they shut it off completely and revert back to their old channels that weren't working for them and getting them the results that they wanted anyway. I see this happening time and time again, and here's what's actually happening. Funnels don't break everywhere at once. They break at one bottleneck and everything else downstream looks worse as a result. Now, this video is for service businesses, it's for business loan brokers, it's for agencies. This is for you if your company already tried paid ads, but you're not growing and adding new clients at the rate you want. Or for teams who are leaning heavily on outbound strategies like cold email, and it's getting harder every single month to add volume without burning more inboxes, burning more time, or burning your brand. Now, before we get into it, who am I? My name is Isaac Wood. I'm the founder of Fast Qualified Leads, and we are a paid ads agency. And so we're working primarily by running Meta, generally Facebook ads, Instagram ads for service-based businesses. And so everything that I'm sharing in this video comes directly from the trenches of what we've seen running client acquisition programs. And I've worked with over 60 plus companies, and this includes companies already doing 7 and 8 figures that wanted to add another 5 to 10 clients per month. And so in short, this video is based on the best things that we're doing at the moment, what's working for our own offers, our clients' offers, and ultimately just sharing those insights with you today. Now, in this video, we're not going to be talking about scaling your team to the moon. We're not scaling your revenue to the moon, but we are talking about building a controllable baseline. And so we use 10 new clients on purpose because that's the point where growth is still very controllable. So if you can reliably bring in 5 to 10 new clients a month, nothing else you do is really mattering that much yet. And so that's ultimately the first milestone, and everything is downstream of that. And so the reason that this matters is simple. With a reasonable client lifetime value, you can assume 10 clients will typically add between 30 to 100K in new revenue. And so that will create a baseline for your business. And so once you have that baseline, you can stop making decisions from scarcity. So you can actually diagnose those problems, you can fix bottlenecks and grow intentionally instead of reacting every time your performance dips. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly how to find the bottleneck in the correct order and fix one metric at a time before you waste another dollar just trying to jam more spend into a broken system. And so the goal here is simple. I want to help you avoid the same mistakes that we've already made in our own campaigns and with our own clients. We can help you understand exactly what actually moves the needle and give you a framework that you can use to apply immediately after watching this video. And if at some point you want help implementing this, you can book a call through the link in the description below where we'll walk you through exactly how it works. Now let's dive into the rest of the video. All right, so starting with the fundamentals, before we get into tactics, there's something that we need to be abundantly clear on. Businesses will only grow in two ways, right? You can either bring in more customers or you can increase the value of those customers. And so when you used to have a funnel that worked and now it suddenly doesn't, the problem is almost never the customer value. It's usually that the flow of new opportunities is choked and caused by a broken step somewhere upstream your funnel. And so what happens next is very predictable. Your team will start reacting, you'll start pushing out new ads, you'll tweak your landing page, you'll tweak your thank you page, rework your offers, scripts will get just rewrite your scripts. And the thing with this is like everyone is busy and sometimes there are even improvements that are being made into the process. But the problem with this is you still don't know exactly what caused the problem in the first place. And so instead the system gets more complex, not simpler. And so that's why simply working harder and doing more doesn't always bring the results back that you were looking for. And so if you're already closing deals and now you're stuck, the issue isn't intrinsic motivation or more effort. It's the system that everything is built upon. So funnels rarely break down evenly. They typically will fail at one point and everything else will look worse as a result. And so again, you can start changing the ads, your landing pages, your offers, your follow-up, and all that's really doing is tinkering with your machine instead of removing the one main blocker that stopped it in the first place. And so the rest of this video is about how to find that blocker in the right order and then fix it before you burn more money trying to push through a problem that is not explicitly your bottleneck. So today's plan, the only fix works if you approach it in the right order. And so we're going to do that by restoring the baseline, then identifying a real constraint, then fixing one metric at a time, and then giving enough time for each change to materialize through your system so you can prove whether it worked or not and continue to make changes and iterate to success. If you skip this order, you're going to stay stuck reacting. If you follow it, the system becomes predictable. All right, step one, back to baseline. When performance drops, it's normal to start wanting to take action immediately. Again, like getting creatives, testing new ideas, seems like the natural next step. Doing something feels better than doing nothing. So people start spinning things up, new ads, new landing pages, extra questions on your application, tweaking your sales script. There are a million things that you can do to fix your funnel. That doesn't mean you should be doing all of them. Let me illustrate this concept to you with a real client story. So we had a client who was already getting good results. They were spending more than $1,000 per day on ads with us. That's over $30,000 a month. And those leads were coming in consistently and they were even closing some deals. Then performance started to slip. And so the first reaction was exactly what you would expect. They came to us and say, hey, it must be the ads. Your ads are broken. And that's usually where people start. They think about traffic and creative and things on the ad campaign level, and something in marketing must be broken. And sometimes that is the case. But when we actually looked at the data, the top of the funnel is not what had changed. What had changed showed up further downstream. And so their connect rate dropped super hard. We were targeting and it stabilized around a 70% connection rate. So that their actual metric was at 35%. And so at face value, that still feels like it could be a marketing problem. And sometimes people think, hey, bad leads, lower quality traffic. But once we dug into the process and once the leads were delivered, the pattern became clear. Call dispositions were inconsistent. Speed to lead was not being hit. The follow-up cadence had slipped and call attempts weren't happening at different times of the day. So as the account scaled up its spend, the same standards that worked at lower volume were not being enforced with the same rigor. And so the system didn't break overnight. It just stretched past what it was designed to handle. And so execution consistency slipped as the volume increased and the system stopped producing the same outcome. So once we saw that, the fix was simple. Instead of blowing up our funnel, pausing everything, making 100 new ads, changing scripts, and having an argument between sales and marketing and just blaming each other and pointing fingers at each other for the ad performance, we went through, we used data, and we identified the bottleneck. So we reestablished the baseline. We set clear appointment setting protocols. We defined speed to lead expectations. We standardized follow-up requirements, and we included accountability around that execution through the management team. And within days, performance started to return. And that's not because we added anything new. It was because we restored the way the system was supposed to run. Now, that's the rule in all of this. You want to restore your baseline before you change anything else. If your execution standards slip as you scale up, your metrics will tell you that your funnel is broken even when it isn't. Marketing is a math equation with variables and constants. So when those results change, your first job isn't to change the variables. It's to make sure the constants are still intact. Only then can you diagnose the real constraint with confidence. Next step is identifying the constraint. So once your baseline is restored, the next mistake that most people will make is very subtle and often way more expensive. They start fixing the wrong thing. And so on the surface, this sounds ridiculous. Improving any metric feels productive. If your close rate goes up, that's great. If your show rate improves, that's also making progress. If you lower your cost per lead, then most folks are typically happy. But funnels, like any system, don't fail evenly, and they don't reward effort evenly either. So the real danger isn't that you don't improve, it's that you improve the least leveraged part of your system and you leave huge amounts of money on the table. And the reason that that happens is simple. People will fix what they can see. They fix what they own, and they fix what feels close to revenue. So sales teams will focus on their close rate, marketing will focus on their ads, ops will focus on the process. None of that is necessarily wrong. It's just incomplete. And so a functioning system doesn't care about who owns what or how much effort you put into it. A system works when you have the full throughput. So that's why intuition and guessing breaks down so quickly. And so without a model, every optimization conversation turns into a debate based on anecdotes and opinions and ultimately your feeling. And so a model will remove all of that. Now, before you can identify a constraint, you need two things. First, you need a financial model. This isn't complicated. You don't need a forecast 10 years out. You're just defining your goalposts. Just think about, what does your client pay you? How long do they stay? And how much can you afford to spend to acquire one? And if you don't know the answers to those questions, then you just don't know whether your funnel is healthy or broken. And so you're really just going to be reacting in that situation. But once you have that, the second piece is the funnel model. So this is the step-by-step conversion path from lead to revenue. That's each stage, each percentage. Don't want to be thinking about stories or excuses. You just have math. And so once you can see the funnel clearly, the question you ask is not, what should we improve? It's this: where in the funnel can we most realistically create a 2x improvement? That's going to be your bottleneck. So let's look at this with real world numbers. So assume your funnel looks like this. You have a 35% connect rate, you have a 50% booking rate, you have a 70% show rate, and a 15% close rate. Assuming your average client is worth 60 grand, out of 1,000 leads, that gives you 350 connects, 175 meetings booked, 122 and a half meetings actually attended, and 18.375 net new clients. And so that's roughly $1.1 million in net new revenue. Now, here's where most people go wrong. They'll look at their funnel and they'll say, let's improve our close rate. So they train harder, they'll rewrite their scripts, and they'll drill on their objections. Let's say they do a good job, and so they increase their close rate from 15 to 20%. That is an improvement, and now the funnel will produce 24 and a half clients, which is about $1.47 million in revenue. That's an extra $367,000 in revenue. Good outcome and real progress. But now let's look at that funnel again. The connect rate is still 35%, and that is the bottleneck. So instead of heroically improving your close rate, you focus upstream and you say, can we realistically double our connect rate? Not to perfection, just from 35% to 70%. So you accomplish this by dialing in your time to lead, your appointment setting process. You start sending selfie videos, following up within 1 minute as soon as that lead is generated, and you start sending a bunch of valuable content, value-driven emails, sales assets that helps them solve their problem. So you end up speaking with 70% of your leads instead of just 35%. Now the math changes completely. You have a 70% connect rate, a 50% booking rate, a 70% show rate, and a 15% close rate. So out of 1,000 leads, 700 connects, 350 meetings booked, 245 meetings shown. That's 36.75 new clients. So in general, that is going to total $2.2 million in new revenue. Same exact system, focusing on a different constraint and fixing that constraint. And so as a result, we've generated an additional $735,000 in revenue by solving the right problem and changing nothing else about your process. And once you can see it laid out like this, you can't unsee it. Upstream fixes compound across the entire funnel. It's not about working harder or fixing everything. It's about finding the one place where a 2x improvement multiplies your entire system's throughput. And if you spend your time fixing the wrong constraint, you still might improve, but you'll leave an enormous amount of money on the table without even realizing it. And so once you understand this, the next step becomes abundantly clear. And so you need to know exactly what metrics to look at first, second, and third so you don't waste time optimizing the wrong part of your funnel. And that's what we'll cover next. Once you understand that upstream fixes compound and downstream fixes don't, the question becomes obvious. Where do you look first? Because if you expect the funnel in the wrong order, you'll still improve, just not where it matters most. And that's what this framework is for. This is a funnel constraint analysis. It's the order that we use to diagnose performance when a funnel slows down, so we don't lie to ourselves, we don't tell ourselves a story, and we don't waste time fixing the wrong symptoms. And so you start at the top and you don't move down until the step above is working. Step 3, the metric hierarchy. So once your baseline is restored and you're thinking in bottlenecks, you'll need one more thing, a hierarchy. Because if you look at your metrics out of order, you'll diagnose the wrong constraint and you'll start fixing the funnel in ways that make it harder to see what's really happening. This hierarchy will tell you where to look first, second, and third so you don't chase symptoms. I've seen this a handful of times. A team swears the landing page is broken, so they rebuild it, or they swear their lead quality is bad, so they change their messaging, or they swear that sales is the problem, so they rewrite the script. Then you pull the numbers and it's very obvious. They were using their gut to make a decision or looking at the wrong part in the funnel. Instead, what we'll do is we'll look at 5 key steps in the funnel. And so you can use your model assumptions to know if you are healthy. Only then move down to the next step. So here's the funnel that we're actually using for our standard VSL or video sales letter call book funnel. And so this is the funnel. Our focus here is to generate booked qualified appointments onto our sales team's calendar. The first thing we want to look at is our creative signal. So step 1 is always going to be making sure that our creative is on point. And so in 2026, creative production is a huge bottleneck, especially because this is a post-Andromeda world. So this is because it prioritizes high quality creative Andromeda, which is the algorithm that governs all of Meta's advertising platform. And so most people, they don't realize that they need 25 or more ad creative to get consistent results. So here's why this comes first. If your ad creative doesn't earn the viewer's click, there's no traffic and nothing else in the funnel matters yet. So you don't have enough volume or clean data, and anything you fix downstream is really just guessing. So creative signal is captured in 2 key numbers, the click-through rate and the cost per click. Now the click-through rate tells you one thing. Did the message earn attention? The cost per click tells you another. It's basically saying how expensive was that attention? And so these are the 2 numbers that will tell you whether the market is responding to your messaging, your angle, and your offer framing. If your click-through rate is below target, you have a message problem. The promise isn't clear, the angle is not resonating, or the ad isn't calling out the right buyer or situation. If your CPC is climbing, your cost per click is going up, that's the market charging you a tax for weak creative. And so Meta has to work harder to get you clicks, so it charges you more as a result. So this is where most teams will lose weeks. They rebuild their landing pages, they add more form questions, they tweak their sales scripts, but the ad never earned the click in the first place. So before you touch your funnel, your page, or your follow-up, just make sure that your creative signal is healthy. Then start making changes to the rest of your funnel. All right, so our next step here is going to tell us whether or not that click turned into real intent, because a click is not yet a lead. A click is simply curiosity. If people don't take that first committed action, then nothing downstream matters yet. So the core metric in step 2 is application lead form starts. And so what that means is out of everyone who clicks, how many people actually started the application form? And so that single number tells you whether the page is doing its job. Now, depending on how your funnel is built, we'll use one additional signal to understand why that form start might be too low. And so in a direct lead form funnel, we'll just look at form starts over traffic. If we're doing a VSL funnel, we can still care about the form starts, but we'll also look at how many people actually watch enough of the video to be persuaded. The goal in both cases is the same. Did the click turn into intent? In other words, did they actually get the lead to take action? Now, if your creative signal is healthy, your click through rate and your cost per click are on track, but your form starts are low, you don't have a traffic problem. You have a landing page problem. That usually means one of three things. The headline doesn't match the promise in the ad, the proof isn't strong enough to justify the next step, or there's too much friction before the form even starts. So if you're using a VSL, the logic is completely the same. If people watch but don't click, or they watch but still don't start the form, then the page failed to convert that curiosity into commitment. And so once you earn the click, you have to earn the actual people aren't starting the form, then your ad dollars will disappear into thin air fast. Step 3 is booked call rate. This step answers one question. Did the high intent lead actually take action and commit to a next step? Because starting a form means someone is interested, booking a call means they understand what's going to happen next and why it's worth their time. We are looking at the call booked rate. So this is the number of booked calls divided by people who land on the booking page. This tells you whether your funnel is creating opportunities with intent or just collecting names with incomplete information. So here's how you diagnose step 3. If your ads are earning clicks and people are starting the form, but they're not booking a call, you have a trust and a clarity gap. They're interested, but they don't fully understand what the call is for, what they'll get out of it, or why now is not the right time. In other words, the funnel hasn't finished the job yet. So step 3 isn't about pressure. It's about reassurance. And when this step is weak, teams often misdiagnose it as a sales issue when the real problem is the funnel didn't do enough to earn the commitment. So once someone actually books the call, then the question becomes execution. That's the next step. That's step 4. Step 4 is show rate. So this step answers a very different question than step 3. It says, did the system successfully turn a commitment into an actual conversation? The key metric here is show rate, which is the attended calls divided by the total overall booked calls. At scale, you want this around 40% or higher. Below that, something is breaking after the booking, but before the call. This is where most teams get it wrong. Low show rates get blamed on bad leads, low intent, or just simply Facebook traffic doesn't work. But the show rate is almost never a traffic problem. It's if someone booked a time on their calendar, intent existed. That means they have a problem they are trying to get solved immediately. They are in pain and they want to solve that problem. What broke was not interest. It was expectation setting, trust building, or follow through. So a no-show usually means one of three things happened. They weren't clear on what the call was actually for, they didn't feel confident it would be worth their time, or the system didn't stay present enough between booking and call time. So in other words, the lead didn't go cold, the process didn't sell them on taking the next step and actually showing up. And notice the difference here. Step 3 is a trust gap before commitment. Step 4 is an execution gap after commitment. If they don't book, it's clarity and trust. If they book but don't show, it's process and expectation. And this is why fixing show rate is so powerful. You don't need more leads, new ads, or a new offer. You already paid for the opportunity, you just didn't protect it. And so once people show up consistently, then and only then does close rate become your main constraint. Step 5 is close rate. This is the final gate in your funnel, and it only becomes the constraint after everything else upstream is working. One metric that you want to look at here is just going to simply be deals closed divided by total calls attended. So at scale, a healthy target is roughly 20%. That's not because it's a magical number. It assumes you have qualified leads, real intent, and a repeatable process. If calls are happening and deals aren't closing, the constraint has finally moved. And now we're looking at qualification, positioning, objection handling, and how consistently your team runs the sales calls. In other words, execution. This is why optimizing closing rate too early can backfire. If you're closing 20% of small, inconsistent in a leaky funnel, you're really just good at squeezing a weak system. You don't need better closers yet. You don't even need more closers yet. You just need more qualified conversations. So close rate is a multiplier, not an engine. So multipliers only matter once you have full throughput. So if you multiply 0 or close to 0, then you're going to get 0. So now you've seen the entire hierarchy. You have ads, form fills, bookings, show rate, close rate. The question isn't what to fix. The question is how to fix it without blowing up your system. And that's where the 72-hour rule comes into play. Step 4, the 72-hour rule. Now that you've seen the full hierarchy, there's one last problem we need solved. Most people don't fail because they don't know what to do or what to fix. They fail because they change too much, too fast, with no way of knowing what actually worked. When performance dips, here's what usually happens. People will change their ads, they'll rewrite their pages, they'll tweak their forms, they'll improve their sales scripts all at once. So if performance improves, nobody knows why. And if performance gets worse, everyone will argue about what caused it. This is why we run the 72-hour rule. It's very simple. You change one thing and then wait for 72 hours. Why 72 hours? Because that's long enough for those changes to materialize. That will stabilize in your platform. Your signals will stabilize and normalize, and that noise will ultimately settle. And it's not long enough that you're wasting time and you're burning energy just waiting around. Here's the exact loop that we consistently will iterate on. So you want to list every metric across the funnel, best case scenario, and what should be standardized in your operating is just consistently tracking your metrics. You want to ask one question: what is the easiest metric to double or cut in half? That's your constraint. You want to make one targeted change underneath that problem or that constraint to solve for that. And you want to wait 72 hours. If it works, great, keep it, and then move on to the next one. If it doesn't work, then you want to revert back, wait another 72 hours, and repeat. And here's what most people miss. Fixing the most upstream constraint compounds across the entire funnel. A 2x improvement at the top doesn't just help one metric, it helps everything else downstream. So when you follow this rule, something important happens. You stop guessing and you stop panicking, you stop arguing, and what happens is really great. The system tells you exactly what to do next. This is how a high-performing funnel is actually built, not by genius creativity or constant tinkering, but by calm, sequential constraint identification and removal. So if your funnel stops working, you don't need a rebuild. You don't need a new platform. And you don't need to just outspend what you were doing previously to just get out of the bottleneck. You need control, find the constraint, fix it in order, and then let the system do the rest. So now if you want help applying this into your business, here's exactly what to do next. Click the link in the description below and you'll book a call with us. I'll be on that call speaking with you. We'll map out your funnel exactly like we just walked through. We'll identify your constraint, we'll quantify your upside, and we'll decide what to fix first. No pitch, no pressure. There's a clear path to getting you back or getting you to adding 5 to 10 new clients per month. I'll show you exactly what it is. And if it isn't there, that's fine too. I'll just tell you that. Either way, you'll leave with clarity and a plan. So if your funnel used to work and now it doesn't, click the link below, book a call.